Good morning, everyone. We are ready to begin. My name is Karen Berger, and I would like to welcome you to CASAS National News and Updates webinar. Today is February 17th, and we have a nice lineup prepared for you today. Our presenters include Linda Taylor from CASAS, who is our Vice President of Assessment Development. Also joining us from CASAS is Technology Specialist Jessie Despain. We are delighted to welcome our colleagues from Los Angeles Community College District. They are here to share some remote testing tips with us. Thank you, LACCD, for joining, and we are looking forward to hearing what you have to share. Next slide, please. Just want to go over a few of the features of this webinar, although many of you are probably already familiar with Zoom. The first point is that in a webinar, your microphones are automatically muted. So the best way to communicate with us with questions about the presentation is through the Q&A. Any questions that are not answered during the webinar will be added to our FAQs on the website. The chat box should be used just for technical difficulties with using Zoom. And the last bullet point shows the link where you can find copies of today's presentation to download. We will also put that link in the chat box. Next slide, please. So here's a little visual about using a Zoom webinar. From left to right, you see check your audio settings. And then the chat feature, which as I mentioned, should only be used if you have technical difficulties using Zoom. We will not be using the raise hand feature today due to the large numbers in attendance. And that bright green bubble highlights the Q&A, which we already mentioned. This is where you can post your questions about the presentations. Next slide, please. So here's what the Q&A will look like. When you click on that Q&A, as you can see, there's two tabs at the top. One where you can toggle back and forth to see your own questions and answers, or to display all questions and answers. We will be recording this webinar and it will be posted tomorrow sometime. You can go to casas.org to view today's and previous webinars on the CASAS News and Updates page. And now I'll hand the meeting over to Linda Taylor.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session today. Very glad you could take time out to attend. Just want to make it clear that today's webinar is for information. It's not an official training. We are going to talk about the status of our new test series. We're going to talk about collecting demographics for research studies for these series and our needs for that, and how we were going to ask you to help us. As Karen mentioned, we have a presentation from staff from LA Community College District on remote testing tips. We're going to give you an update on remote testing from the CASAS point of view. We have a TE update that I think you'll find quite interesting, and then we have CASAS news. So let's begin with our first topic, which is new CASAS test series. So here, to remind you, hopefully you're all familiar with this, that for ABE, we have reading goals for ABE and ASE that's approved through 2025. Nothing's changed there. The math goals series also for ABE and ASE. A short time ago, we did have an extension of that series approval through 2023. So please take note if you're not aware of that. The ESL series, Life and Work Reading, Beginning Literacy, the Reading for Language Arts, as well as the Life and Work Listening 980 series, all are also now approved through 2023. That was extended a few months ago to a later date, basically due to COVID. So this is the same situation as for other NRS-approved ESL assessments, that they're now good until February 2023. In terms of our new series, what I just went over for ABE, ASE is listed there. And for ESL, we have two new ESL series, one for reading, one for listening. But due to COVID, it's been extremely difficult, as you can well imagine, to do the field testing that we need to get done in order to submit that to the NRS for approval. So that is still pending, and we are we still do need to collect quite a bit of data in order to submit that. So that's the situation. All of these new series are aligned to the College and Career Readiness standards for adult ed, as well as the ELP standards for the ESL series. Just to mention about the listening series and the reading series that are in development, that they will eventually replace the Life and Work series in 2023. And some couple new things about the series, that we are designing them with 5 different levels. So not just A through D, but it'll be A through E. And we think that will really be helpful in terms of more accurate placement and perhaps and hopefully less retesting. They are aligned to the ELP standards for adult ed and to the NRS descriptors for English language learners, and also to the College and Career Readiness standards. Now, just want to ask, we have asked in the last few sessions, but again, are on hands and knees in a way, asking if you would help us to collect demographics, because as you may know, we do field test new items and that are embedded in the current e-tests tests, and unless the demographics are collected at the same time as students answer those questions, we cannot use them for our research studies. So to make the most of these embedded field test questions, we need your help to collect in these 4 fields. So now we're going to show you a short biteable video that tells about this. So Karen, please go ahead and show that. All right, so hopefully that made it clear. I just want to mention that if you already are filling in these demographic fields, then you're all set. No need to do anything differently, and we do appreciate that you do it, whether you're required to do it or you feel that you need to. So no change there if you're already doing it, but the reason we're reaching out about this is for programs that are not already collecting this data. So now I'm going to ask Jesse to please do a demo and show you how you can set it up to collect this data in TOPS Pro Enterprise.
Thanks, Linda. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's good to have you all here. I'm going to share my screen. Here I am getting ready to log into the Rolling Hills simulation server. This is where we're going to take a look now. You can run any kind of scenarios you like here and test things out. That's what I like to do. So I'm going to log in as a coordinator. It brings me initially to this list of testing sessions. And the place where we want to make the change is actually on the testing session templates. So we'll click here, testing session templates. And you can see the number of sessions using it. In this case, we're on this server, so there's a whole lot of sessions. You'll have fewer than this. We're going to edit this ABE/ASE template. So click the edit button. And then the data fields Linda was talking about are here on the data tab. So you click data. And in this session, we have only student info and zip code selected. Perhaps I'll decide that I don't want to collect zip code anymore. So I can remove this from selected and put it over to available. Use that right arrow. Student info you can't remove, that's the name and ID. You need to have that for sure. But the key fields that we're talking about that would be added then are over here, gender. So you can add this by clicking the left arrow, adds it over. Scroll down a little bit, native language is another of the fields. A shortcut here is to double click. So that just sends it right over. I don't need to use the arrows. And then ethnicity is the other one. And I double click that. And just FYI, ethnicity includes two questions, ethnicity and race. So they're both grouped together. I can also reorder these if I like. If I decide that I want to ask ethnicity first, I might push that up to the top right after the student name and ID. Okay, those are the changes that we're happy with. We'll click save. And now every session that has this template name, in this case, ABE/ASE, if we go over to testing sessions, all of these guys have been changed. So here it's 490 sessions. They're all collecting that data now. And what you would do is change your first one and then go right on down the list. And here I would change CIT and CTE and any other templates that I have. That is pretty much it. And if you need any assistance, please call us or email tech support. Thanks very much. Linda?
Thanks, Jesse. All right, so hopefully that gives you a clear idea of how to proceed if you would be willing to do this. Just so you know, on the PowerPoint that is on our website, there are slides that reproduce these same screenshots that Jesse just showed you. So if that's easier for you to access and follow, you can follow along with these slides. Also, yes, we have a resource to help if you want to use this as a lesson. There is a resource on our website that you can look at to teach students how to fill in the demographics in terms of an instructional lesson. If you are willing and whenever you can, and we know that this is really a big ask in these days of the pandemic when you're struggling to do your own pre and post testing, but the fact remains that we do need help to collect field test data if we're ever able to submit these new ESL series. So we are actively recruiting field test agencies to help us. That's now and onward through this year. We have the need for both e-tests and paper pencil. It could be either on-site or remote to do the field testing. The methodology is that you would do the locator or appraisal, if you're doing paper, and then one or two level tests. So some students may only want to do one, but they could possibly do two. And if they do two, they get $10, but it's $5 for a gift card per test that they complete. And we also give complimentary web test or e-test units to agencies who participate. There are FAQs about this. There's a lot of information on the website about how to get involved. It is something that the agencies who have helped us with really enjoy and see that it's a benefit for their students to practice and also to get these gift cards. So if you can possibly help us with it, you can see on the homepage there's a place to click for field testing opportunities with all of this information. And Karen Berger is our field test coordinator, so she is the one who would help you get started. So now it's time to introduce our guest speakers. Our promising practice presentation is, as we mentioned earlier, from Los Angeles Community College District. First of all, I want to thank those who coordinate this program, the testing side of it. That's Angelica Ramirez, who's Dean of Academic Affairs at LA City College, Nelines Colon Palladini, who's the non-credit adult ed program coordinator at LA City College, and Justin Gorens, the EL Civics coordinator, also at LA City College. And today we actually have three pre-recorded videos from 3 of the practitioners at 3 of the colleges, 3 different colleges at LACCD. Dr. Karen Carmichael will be going first. She's from West LA College, and she is going to tell you about mini lessons for student preparation.
Hi, I'm Karen Carmichael with West Los Angeles College. In order to introduce CASAS to students, increase interest, and help facilitate proctoring, we asked the instructors to create a mini lesson.
I'm sorry, I got a network error. I'm not sure why it's not playing. I'm going to try and launch it again.
Hi, I'm Karen Carmichael with West Los Angeles College. In
Um,
order to introduce CASAS to students,
Karen, we
increase
can't see it.
facilitate proctoring, we asked the instructors to create a mini lesson.
I'm so sorry. Can you?
We can see it now.
Oh, you can.
Mhm.
Lesson in which students become familiar with CASAS. In the lesson, they are introduced to the purpose of CASAS administrations, its benefits to them, and to gather information helpful to proctors. After the lesson, students complete a graded assignment. The assignment includes selecting their section number and all tech devices they have access to and running a speed test. The assignment is created in Microsoft Forms so that a spreadsheet containing their answers is automatically generated. For our population, we have both Spanish and English on the form. On test day, because students have done these things, I can quickly sort them into breakout rooms. Doing this has streamlined the process and reduced the number of student questions. It seems to have also reduced their anxiety. Again, I'm Karen Carmichael with West Los Angeles College. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Karen. If you could put on your video, I just want to ask you one question.
Yes.
And that is, hi. Can you tell a little bit more about exactly how you sort the students into the breakout rooms? Is it in terms of the devices they use, or is it another way?
Yes, because we know what tech they have in advance, we can more quickly sort them into breakout rooms by device. Also, because a Microsoft form is generated, we also know who in attendance did not complete the assignment. So I can send them to a breakout room where an assistant is there to find out what tech they have and then put it on the form so that we can then sort them appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
So our district has a laptop scholarship for people who don't have the appropriate tech for classes. So again, I know who doesn't have the appropriate tech, so I can send them to a breakout room with a student assistant who is helping them complete the application for the laptop scholarship. So that is, those are the ways that having that information in advance helps us more easily sort people based on what they need and how we can test them.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay. Now we are going to hear from Sulma Ruiz from LA Southwest College, and she's going to talk about student surveys.
Hello, this is Sulma Ruiz from Los Angeles Southwest College. What we do at our college is survey.
Karen, we can't see it.
Okay. Little difficulty here. I'm so sorry.
In the meantime, we do have a question which maybe Karen, you could answer, is how do you fund the laptop scholarships?
I believe that's the LA Community College District Fund, or it may be our individual colleges' foundations. Perhaps Angelica or Nelly knows the answer.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everybody. Our district raised the money through our district foundation, but we also use our CARES fund monies that our district, there's a portion of the CARES fund that the district received that needed to be given directly to students. So a portion of that direct aid to student was allocated to computers. Additionally, our districts leverage some state funding for student support services. So where possible, some of our colleges, those computer scholarships, if a student is eligible for, say, CalWorks or EOP&S, the colleges will then charge that as an instructional expense for the participants in those specific programs.
Sorry, can you, what are those acronyms you just cited?
EOP&S is, oh my goodness, it's a program for first generation low income students, college students, and for CalWorks is a welfare to work program where students are placed into instruction and they receive support services such as childcare, as well as book fees, etc. So for our district, for instance, the CalWorks program, computer laptop was deemed allowable expense. So students, thank you, Sharon. EOPS is Extended Opportunities Programs and Services.
Okay.
So they were deemed allowable expenses. So our district centralized the distribution and then went back and said, okay, we spend so much on computers, now how do we pay them in addition to the CARES Act money?
Thank you. All right. Well, maybe that's something that other programs can do, and maybe perhaps we're not unaware that you could use that money for that purpose, which is, of course, so much needed to bridge that digital divide that our students find themselves victims of. All right, Karen, you want to give it another shot?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Hello, this is Sulma Ruiz from Los Angeles Southwest College. What we do at our college is survey our students. We do this by coordinating with our instructors to join their live Zoom meetings for about 15 to 20 minutes. During this time, we discuss with our students how we're testing remotely and answer any questions they may have. We then ask the students questions about the technology they have access to. For example, if they have access to a Windows 10 computer or an iPad. Next, we obtain the students' availability. We recognize that some of our students are stay-at-home parents or work various shifts. So we coordinate the best days and times to test. Then we schedule an appointment, explain what to expect the day of the exam, how we will check their technology, and most importantly, we let them know that we want them to feel comfortable and at ease while testing. The day of the exam, We meet with the students via Zoom. We confirmed the type of device being used, as this helps us determine how we will administer the exam. By surveying our students ahead of time, we've been able to coordinate and successfully test hundreds of students while ensuring they feel comfortable in a remote environment. This tip has helped us, and it is my hope it helps you. Again, this is Sulma Ruiz from Los Angeles Southwest College. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suma. Those are really great tips, and I'm sure they'll help those on the call. And if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A for Sulma. And our third one and last is Norel Perez from LA Harbor College. And she's going to share with you about a tip for having students borrow devices.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great.
Hi everyone, Norel Perez here with Los Angeles Harbor College. Just want to give you quick tips before CASAS testing. Please ask your students if they have an electronic device before your testing date. If a student is unsure or does not have one, please ask them, do you have a friend, family member, or maybe a neighbor with an electronic device like a computer, laptop, Surface, or iPad they can use on the day of the test? It is very important to check the device with your student. Some local school district devices are not compatible with CASAS testing. Again, my name is Norel Perez with Los Angeles Harbor College. Have a great day.
Thank you, Norel. So again, if you have questions for Norel, you can put them in the Q&A. So now we're going to move along to our CASAS remote testing update. The first slide here is a reminder of the four approaches that are permissible. Two of them are one-on-one, the remote control and the oral responses, and two of them can be either one-on-one or with multiple test takers. But for testing multiple test takers, you do need a Windows 10 PC or a Chromebook with kiosk mode or an iPad with a similar kind of security installed. Hopefully you're all aware that we have very detailed step-by-step instructions on our website called the CASAS Remote Testing Guidelines with examples for Zoom, but you can use other platforms. And it tells also all about the different devices and platforms that you can use. We are continuing to look at how we can innovate and improve the remote testing experience and possibilities. So some of the ways that are permissible now could perhaps change over time as we are looking into other options. So I wanted to share with you what we are considering. The first one is to allow more than 5 at a time, which is currently the limit for testing multiple students. And this, of course, would be only if a proctor is comfortable with that and has experience with remote testing, not only with e-test, but also with remote testing. So we are conducting a pilot right now with some agencies who are trying this out, trying to determine, is it possible to test up to 12? Should it be less? Could it be more? And then as soon as we collect enough data for that, we will consider expanding the limit that is currently in place of 5. Another very exciting pilot is to administer our NRS-approved tests on smartphones. And this is being tried out again with some pilot agencies for listening, reading, and math. They've been doing this for a few months, but we're still collecting additional data in order to be able to compare the performance of students on taking the test on the phone as compared to those who take it on site. because we don't want to have a difference in performance. The two modes of delivery on phone or not on a phone should be comparable. So that's what we're trying to ensure. And if that turns out to be comparable, then we would be able to make this available. So we don't know what kind of constraints or guidelines we would need to put on that, but we are very actively pursuing that as an option. The next one is something that's quite exciting. It is to integrate the video conferencing, which is something like Zoom or another one, into eTests. So it would be embedded in eTests, and it would mean that you wouldn't have to use another platform, that the video aspect, the video monitoring, would be able to take place right within eTests. So we are currently in what's called alpha testing of that. That is, we're trying it out internally. And our next step will be to try it out with our remote testing pilot agencies. And if all goes well, as soon as we possibly can, we will make that available more widely to all of you. Another possible option is third-party proctoring. This is something that we have been looking into. So far, we are not planning to do it, but if we do get interest from you, all of you, that is sufficient to offer it, we certainly would consider doing that. So if it's something that your agency or your state is interested in doing, please do let us know. Here are some reminders, the basics of remote testing, just to kind of keep in mind that there are certain things that are possible, and there are some that are not possible, and one is to test with paper tests remotely. So if you're going to use paper, they would have to be, your students would have to be on site. They could be in cars on site, but they would have to be on site. It's also not permitted to copy, scan, or reproduce CASAS tests, or to send them out and then get them back, or to record the testing sessions. And I'm sorry to have to mention this every month, but it's only there because we continue to get questions as to whether this is possible. So better to tell all of you at once that it's these things are not possible. Another thing that recently came out on Zoom is, of course, they've had these Zoom virtual backgrounds for a while, but now they've recently come out with something called filtered backgrounds that kind of blur the background. So just to make it clear that that is something that you cannot allow for your students to do, because it means the proctor would not be able to see what's going on in the room. So if your student has that kind of set and may not even be aware of it, you would have to take and make sure it's not set for that, and ask them to turn that off. So in general, we want you to be creative, but we do ask that you follow the guidelines that are detailed on the website in those documents, and please continue with remote testing. We really want you to do it, but to do it appropriately. Another thing to consider if you're going to do remote testing, but you have never tested with listening, is to consider doing that, because you can imagine that it doesn't require as much reading. It sort of suits itself to remote testing. And one thing that we've revised for remote testing and otherwise is that, I mean, when they're in a lab, they can always use a headphone or earbuds, but originally we said they couldn't for remote testing, but now we've changed that to say that they can. So if you'd like to try that, you could just try it out to begin with. You'd want to make sure your students are familiar with the format, and for that they can go to the CASAS eTest sampler to practice in the eTest format before launching into that. So one of the things that we've seen as a trend in the field is that some agencies are tending to do one-on-one remote testing, mostly because it's easier. And it's easier because the proctor has to have less expertise in terms of their experience or familiarity with the technology. It's also, if you're bringing on new staff to be eTest proctors, that's already a lot for them to learn eTests, and then to also be able to learn to do it remotely is a fairly steep learning curve. So the one-on-one can be an easier way for them to ease into it. Another reason that some agencies may be doing one-on-one remote is that the scheduling of both staff and students is a little bit more straightforward, so you can just get it done and have it be a little simpler of a process. So whether you're doing one-on-one or multiple learners, just want to emphasize that the preparation part, as our speakers just emphasized so well, is extremely important. And that's to see what devices they have, make sure they have the bandwidth, make them aware of all that their room will be scanned, all these things, and also to make them more comfortable with the whole process. So, and there was the tip that that Karen gave us, that you could even consider doing this as part of instruction. So you could have a class lesson that basically prepares students for their testing remotely. If you would like to consider doing multiple test takers, maybe ease into it, but try it. Here's a couple things that we recommend. One is that you might consider changing your paradigm for how you conceptualize the scheduling for multiple test takers. So you might think of doing it in terms of which device they have. Normally, of course, when you're on site, you normally bring a whole class, whoever's there, into the testing room. And now I know online, many programs with remote testing, they have the same kind of mindset as go to the class. The students are sitting there, you know they're there. You don't have to chase them down and then try to test them. But even though, of course, it's good that they're there, but you still, if you've done some of this pre-work to survey them and find out about which devices they have, then you can streamline the actual testing by putting them in breakout rooms in terms of which devices. Then if they have additional questions about their device getting set up, all those students would have the same device. It just can make that more efficient. And you can also send the Zoom link to the students in terms of which device they have. So that also streamlines the process if it's a different Zoom link. As one of our presenters mentioned, Sulma was telling us that we could do a survey, whether it's a written survey or in their native language or in English, or perhaps an oral questioning about what devices they have, and try to, expand that to family members or neighbors to be able to do the remote testing. Also, be aware of how many students you're scheduling. And if it's a lot who are available, you might have to add on staff who are supporting the proctor or giving technology help or helping with the setup. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jesse, and he's going to take over talking about the next few slides.
Hello again, everybody. So these are some tips about remote testing, some things that we've definitely come up with in our piloting and in our own testing. These are some things, if you're already doing remote testing, these can be helpful for you. Anybody who's considering or just getting started, these are things to keep in mind. So just to kind of reiterate from the guidelines, this is covered in the guidelines. You need to view the student's screen before you start the test. And the purpose behind that is to see any applications they might have running, especially if you're doing approaches 1 or 4, where you are sharing the screen. They're using Zoom, they're not using the secure browser. So you want to make sure they don't have any browsers open or email or anything like that before they actually remote into your computer and take the test. It's pretty important. You can also see everything that happens on the device, and it's very important, or it's very helpful if you're going to be installing anything or guiding the student. Some of our new products, you're actually installing something, so it's very helpful to see exactly what the student's clicking on. If you've ever helped, a parent or a child or somebody over the internet, it's so helpful, so useful to know exactly what they're clicking on. Someone may say they're clicking on the right side of the screen, and they're actually clicking on the left. So just to reiterate that when you're sharing the student's screen, you can see all that information, and it's incredibly helpful. Next slide, please. Okay, so one consideration about this screen sharing is that it does take up some bandwidth. So if you have a student who takes the speed test before you've actually started the test, they only get about 3 or 4 megabits per second. They're good enough to take the test. They're probably not going to be able to stream out from their computer the audio, the video from their camera, and the screen sharing as well. So in that case, it's kind of a judgment call for the proctor. You're most likely going to want to not share the screen from the student, because then you have more power for the video and audio, which are so important for test security and for monitoring what's going on, and to be able to help the student if they have any issues. Next, please. Also, what's very helpful is establishing a protocol with the student. It can be anything you prefer, anything the student prefers. Maybe the proctor likes to do text messages or chat within Zoom, whatever you're using. Just make sure that you notify the student during your part A when you're establishing with them the procedures. Raise your hand on camera, I'll see you. If you have a question, if you have any issues, if you lose internet, you can maybe text me, or you can call the school, you can type in the chat. There's so many possible ways, but just give them a channel to communicate with you. We've heard from several pilot testers that students got into the breakout room and just didn't know what to do next. And so it's very helpful if you'll explain that to them. Just make sure to mention, any questions, any problems, raise your hand and I'll see you, or whatever you decide. Next, please. Okay, here's a TE update. Okay, I'm also going to talk about this TE data transfer wizard. This is a very cool feature. We've had it in TE for a little while, but we're just announcing it now because we feel that a lot of you out there will be able to use this. It's something that's been requested for some time. And so what you're able to do is take a student's data, most importantly, a test that they've taken, and transfer it from one adult school to another, from one agency in TOPS Enterprise to another agency in TOPS Enterprise. There's a wizard where we'll call it agency A can make a request of agency B. You're gonna figure out where that student has tested before, and you go ask the administration of that agency, can I have their test records? Can I have their demographic records? They're going to hopefully say yes, and then you get a copy of that data in your own database. It's all protected by the same security that TE uses for all the data. So it's not as if you're emailing a CSV file or anything sensitive like that. It's all protected. It's all within the database, all within the same server. So this on the screenshot, you have the request data button that is on the student demographics lister. You select the student you want and you click that button and it launches this wizard. Next slide, please. You're going to go through some steps and say exactly which data you would like to have, and you send that off on your side, and then agency B receives it, and they're going to see your request and who it is and what data you'd like. So tests or demographic data, and they can approve individually. So they can even be as detailed as saying, I'll send you the birth date, but not the highest year of school, if for some reason there's a policy against that, or it's very fine-grained if you want it to be. Next page, please. Okay, so very important, the student has to sign consent form. Of course, no one's going to transfer data without the student agreeing to that. So they need to agree that it's okay for agency A to share their data with agency B, and you need that consent on both ends. So in TE, in the student record, the demographic record, there's this field, signed, unsigned, or unknown. If it doesn't say signed here, then the wizard stops. This is a prerequisite for any data sharing. Next, please. Okay, so an important part about this, a very useful part, perhaps some of you have transferred tests before, maybe another school in your region had given some instruction to that student. You could before export a CSV file, and you could have the test data, but you wouldn't have the item responses, the A, B, C, D answers. And you could even maybe call them up and talk to that proctor or that teacher and say, you know, what did they get on the 901R? Oh, it was a 240. Okay. And then what you do on your end, this has always been possible. You just type in the 240. So you have the test, you know that they took that test and got a 240, let's say a month ago. But now you're going to have all the ABCD answers. It's all the exact data that was in the other agency. And that's really helpful for competencies and content standards, the ISP, a lot of different reports. Pretty much the foundation of the CASAS system is knowing what the student did well on, what the student did not do well on, and you'll have that information. Next page, please. Okay, when would you want to do this? So there's a few scenarios we can think of. I'm sure you all will think of some more. There's a lot of ways this can be useful. And again, it's been requested for a while. The most common one we can think of is somebody transferring. So perhaps they move and they were at an adult school one town over. You can get that test record. You can get actually their whole test history if you like. But importantly, if they took a test in the last, say, 3 months, 90 days, you would want to use that test rather than giving them another test. We call over-testing, right? It also allows you to intake them immediately. You don't have to give them a CASAS test before you put them into a class. You could have that information. Another possibility is workforce. If we have any WIOA Title I agencies here, it's very common. The standard workflow is for you to intake a student, you give them a test, you determine where they're at, and if they score below a certain level, then they need remediation or more instruction, and you send them on to an adult school. So you could actually, as the workforce agency, you could send that data over to another agency in your state, in your county. But the two of you, the two agencies, are going to make that agreement together, and you are approving it on each end. So it's very flexible. And another possibility would be if an entire state decides we're going to share all the data so we don't overtest anyone. As we all know, during lockdown right now, people are going from one school to another. If there's an opening 2 towns over in the remote classes, they may just switch over there. It's all done over the internet. You don't have to have proximity. So something like that happens, you want to keep a good track of the student and their test results. You can transfer that data amongst multiple agencies. It will be a 1-by-1. So you can go from agency A to agency B, and separately agency A to agency C, or B to C, like that. A lot of flexibility, a lot of good things. We've had a couple of states inquire about this already. So we've been working with them, and we can certainly work with anyone who's interested in this. Next, please. There's a full help document. This is actually recently produced. This link will take you to it, or you can go through this path here. You go to the CASAS website, the training and support section at the top, TOPS Pro Enterprise Help on the left, and then there is a data exchange section where you have all the third-party data exchange and all those documents. And there's a new one, transferring student data between agencies. Walks you through everything. It's very complete, but if you have any questions, contact tech support, and they'll be pleased to guide you through it. I believe that's it. Next page. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jesse. Great. The next topic is the reading level indicator, or the RLI. And this is something that has been developed for use due to these unusual circumstances we're in, where you may not always be able to pre-test a student with an NRS approved test at the time of enrollment, but you still want to start instructing and enrolling these students. So what the U.S. Department of Ed, OCTAE, allows is that you can use an informal assessment for what they call provisional placement into an NRS table. In order to meet this need, to provide a tool that is very likely to be more precise than something that you might make yourself, we made Form 601R. And it is basically a kind of appraisal. It's made up of CASAS practice questions, so they're not secure. And as a result, they can be, this can be given without a proctor, and it even can be given on a mobile phone or any other device. So this is the only approved CASAS instrument that can be used on a phone right now, but it's a great opportunity actually to get your students to find out the level that your students are, uh, and even if they only have a phone, they can still do it. There's an online version of this, which is free to CASAS users of who use eTests or TOPS for Enterprise. And there, for a paper version, there is a charge, and you can order those through the CASAS catalog. The target audience is all ABE and ASE students. And then for ESL, it is only for level 3, NRS 3, that is high beginning and higher. That is because at the lower levels, we would expect and encourage you to use other kinds of screening instruments, like an oral screening of some kind. We have, of course, the CASAS 6 oral questions or whatever you might want to use. But when, for the same students that you would use a locator or an appraisal, you can use this RLI. You do not get a scale score. What you get is an estimated NRS level, either for ABE or ESL. Actually, you get both. In case you're not sure at the time whether the student is ABE or ESL, you can choose. And just to remind you, this is not an NRS approved test, and you cannot use it for pre and post testing for MSGs. And the recommendation is that as soon as you can, to give an NRS approved pretest to take the place of this provisional placement level. So now we're going to move on to some CASAS news. We're excited that we are going to have our CASAS National Summer Institute this year. It's going to be, for the very first time, virtual. We're all getting used to this, and it's exciting and challenging, I would say, to figure out how to do it. But we are, we have gone into some of the details, and here's what we can share with you, that the dates, and you can now register on the CASAS website. So now I'm going to ask Karen to show an animated biteable that introduces the CASAS Summer Institute.
Can you see my screen?
Yes? Thank you. So that is the overview. Just to reiterate, these are the dates. That first week, those 2 days will be training focused with CASAS ITs. We normally have the labs, but we will be offering sessions on TOPS Pro Enterprise and CASAS eTests, and also trainings on workforce skill certification. And then the second week, the 22nd and 23rd, we want to give you a break and come back the next week for 2 days for all of these different topics that we normally cover in our Summer Institute. So hopefully, actually some of you who have never been able to come because you couldn't travel to San Diego, it's an opportunity to attend this year at a distance. And we really look forward to having a lot of you there, many first timers perhaps. Just some additional updates about trainings. We are offering TE Basics training. The February one has filled up, but the next one is on March 19th, and you can register for that on the CASAS website. So please take advantage of that training that is a live demo of TOPS Enterprise to introduce you to it, or even if you're using it already, it can be helpful to learn some new things about it that you weren't aware of. It's from 10:30 to 12 Pacific or 1:30 to 3 Eastern or end times in between. We also have something called live facilitated implementation trainings. So these are covering the training modules that can also be done as self-study modules, but some people prefer to have a facilitator. And so to accommodate that, we are offering these trainings where you, anyone in your state or those of you who are listening can go through the same modules, but with a facilitator. So again, you can register for these on the CASAS website. There are sessions, module 1 and 2 would be focusing on e-test implementation, modules 1 and 3 on paper. And then if you're a teacher or anyone who wants to understand more about how to interpret test results and reports, that's module 4 with together with module 1. So please take advantage of these if you prefer to have someone guide you through these trainings. The next one is on March 2nd, which is module 1. And then you'll see on the website that the other modules are listed and you can register for them. You do get a certificate of completion if that's helpful to you. We have something fairly new called office hours every Friday at 11 Pacific and 2 Eastern. So that's where whatever kind of question you have, you can show up and it's a Zoom meeting where we have CASA staff from all the different departments available, and they're there to answer any type of question. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, you need to register for it online. This is on the very far right side of the homepage, and you'll see that place to click for CASAS office hour registration. And finally, our next monthly webinar will be on Wednesday, March 17th, and we have the news and updates webinar section on the CASAS website where you can register for that and also find our previous webinars. Actually, we'll ask you to register tomorrow for that, and also the recording for today's session will be available tomorrow. So here are some links for anyone for specific types of inquiries, if you want to order or tech support training, if you just want to start, get some folks started in e-tests, that's go live at casas.org, and for remote testing. So we have another couple minutes. I might just ask, I see that all the, almost all the questions that have been posed in the Q&A have been asked and answered, but I wonder, are there any questions that might be of interest to others? You know, just so you know, you can in the Q&A you can check the answered tab, and then you can see not only the questions but the answers in the Q&A if you're not familiar with that. So does anyone have any additional questions? Or CASAS, Janice, are there any questions that you feel others might benefit from hearing the answers to that were answered already?
Well, I really enjoyed what Jesse's overview of the data transfer wizard. If someone can post in the chat the link to that document, that would be really handy, I think.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? You can go ahead and ask. In the meantime, I'm going to go to the website, and just to let you know, we will be staying on if anyone would like to keep asking questions. But here you can see on the website homepage, as I was saying on the right, there are these places where you can click for the office hours, the live facilitated trainings, for the news and updates webinars, and you can see previous webinars. They're all recorded and in archive. If you want to register for the Summer Institute, that's here. If you want to find out about the online training, that's clicking here, and that will take you to all the training modules. And we have reorganized them in terms of what type of user you are. If you're doing e-tests, these are the trainings, paper testing, and so on. I also want to point out where you can find out about remote testing. Sometimes it's so big that people miss it on the homepage, but it's right under what's new. And if you click on remote testing, you'll see a wealth of information, everything you need to know about remote testing. We have about registering stations. We have a summary chart of the approaches. We have FAQs that we updated a little while ago. And we do also have videos of some of the different approaches. The one-on-one remote testing demo, if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it because it gives you an idea of what it's really like to do the remote testing. And also, as far as the reading level indicator, that's also at the bottom of the page, and these agreements that you need to sign to get started. So I see we still have some questions coming in to be answered, so we'll keep the lines open for a while. We appreciate that you took time out today to attend and hope that the tips and information that we were able to offer were useful for you. Any other questions that would be that were asked earlier that would be good to share? Okay.
Nope, not really. Thank you, Linda.
All right. Okay. Well, it is after the hour. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to keep the webinar open, though, for a little while because we still have some unanswered questions, 2 questions that are open. Maybe, Rebecca, if you're still there, we might need clarification about your question. It seems like the end of a previous question. You're asked, it says, such as when they have taken the tests in ESL versus ABE. Could you either type in or what is the previous part of the question? So, Rebecca, perhaps what you're asking is if they've taken a test perhaps they were in ESL and they took a life and work reading, but then they transition over to ABE. You have to, in that case, you would have to test them as a baseline with the goal series. You cannot do a post-test with the life and work reading if they're in ABE. Once they're in ABE, they need to use the ABE approved tests rather than the ESL tests. So is that, if you could just indicate if that, oh, I have students who were required to take additional tests to be NRS approved. Yeah, that may be, is it because they transitioned to ABE? Yes, okay. Then do you understand that they do have to take a pre and a post test in the appropriate series for each program. So in ESL, it's life and work, and in ABE, it's the goals series. There's a question about going to the remote testing site, which is on the screen right now. And you're looking for this is to Fina Long. You're looking for information on retesting a learner. Well, so for that, you would follow the regular protocols for pre and post testing. Or are you saying you need that a learner topped out or bottomed out, didn't get an accurate range score, and then you need to retest the learner in order to get an accurate score? If you could clarify your question, please. The 917, yes. That and what is the question exactly? If the student doesn't get an accurate range score, then they do need to retest. If they top out, they have to take a retest at the next higher level, or if they bottom out, they have to retest at the next lower level. For that, you can, well, it happens automatically in e-tests that they'll be given the next appropriate test to take. But if you're doing paper testing, then you would find that in the next assigned test chart. All right, I think we have come to the end of our questions. So thank you all. We have one more comment here. Please put the link to the mini lessons for student preparations. That is in the PowerPoint, and that is going to be posted on the website. But I can also, Karen, could you put that link from the PowerPoint into the chat, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. When using the CASAS test remotely, why are you using cell phones? Oh, why is it not permitted? It's not permitted because the cell phones are small. And so the concern is that this, our tests were not designed to be given on cell phones on such a small screen. So that's why we're doing a pilot to see if students can successfully take the tests on a small screen if they're good at it and if the proctor's comfortable with that. So that's something that needs to be determined. And once we find that out, we may be able to make it possible. But until then, it's not permitted. Okay, I think that's it. Last call, anybody? Okay, thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month.